Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Schoonmaker. I'm the Executive Director of the Seattle Business Forum. I'll be saying that again in a moment here. We'll be starting our program in about 2 minutes as we wait for people to filter in. Hello again. My name is Daniel Schoonmaker. I'm the Executive Director of Michigan Sustainable Business Forum, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's policy briefing. For those that are not familiar with our organization, the Sustainable Business Forum works with business institutions across the state to the Midwest to advance climate leadership, social justice, and the creation of a circular economy. These briefings are a service we provide to our members and stakeholders to inform them of key happenings in Lansing, DC, and local governments, and to facilitate their participation toward positive sustainable business outcomes. If you're not yet a member of our organization, please do consider becoming one today. These briefings are supported by the Climate Action Campaign and Energy Foundation, with our educational program underwritten by presenting sponsors Forestry Management, Schupan, the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation, and the Chicago Regional Food Fund. Upcoming webinars include a discussion on sustainable transportation as part of our Grand Rapids Active Community Week campaign on September 9th, and the final report of our recent economic evaluation and characterization of Michigan's municipal solid waste in late September. Today's discussion will focus on the Senate Rural Prosperity and Food Security Act, the 100 bipartisan bill package that serves as the framework for the 2024 Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is a package of legislation passed roughly once every 5 years that has tremendous impact on farming livelihoods, how food is grown, and what kinds of food are grown. It expires every 5 years. As the chairwoman of the U.S. Senate Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee, Senator Debbie Stabenow has led the passage of the past 2 farm bills and is working to pass this year's version. Today, we're going to hear about the current version of the bill from the senator and discuss a number of key issues of importance to our members and stakeholders. We're joined by 2 of our members, our collaborators from the Zero Food Waste Coalition, and a representative from the Sustainable Agriculture Advocacy community today. With that, I'd like to introduce the chairwoman who will be leading our discussion today. Made in Michigan through and through, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow continues to lead on public policy and improve the lives of the people of Michigan and Americans across our country. Her leadership is characterized by an unrivaled work ethic, the ability to build bipartisan coalitions to get things done, and a commitment to public service that has set the standard for constituent service. Senator Stabenow is driven by the belief that we can't have a strong economy unless we make things and grow things in our state. As chair of the powerful Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, her work continues to shape our nation's food and farm policy, impacting generations to come. The 2024 Farm Bill will be the Senator's 6th Farm Bill, and the 3rd she has led as either chair or ranking member of the committee. She has redefined the role of American agriculture in protecting our land and water, responding to the climate crisis, addressing hunger and nutrition, and creating a food system that's more inclusive. She created the first specialty crop title in Farm Bill history to support Michigan's broad range of crops, from our fruits and vegetables to hops and horticulture. She's been laser focused on helping to create more opportunities for food entrepreneurs and urban farmers. It is my great pleasure to welcome Michigan Treasurer, Senator Debbie Stabenow.
Well, hello, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you, even remotely. And thank you, Daniel. I'm looking forward to our discussion on some of my very favorite topics with my very favorite folks in terms of the issues you're working on. It's so very, very important, and we're making progress. It's it's always step by step, not as fast as any particular person would like, but we are consistently moving forward, and that's what's so important. So just a couple of comments, and I'm happy to answer questions. But as was said by Daniel, I've been involved in 6 farm bills. This is the 3rd one that I'm leading. And I can tell you the most important thing for me in the climate that we're in right now is not going backwards. We are not going backwards. And so we've always been able to keep partisan politics out of the Agriculture Committee, but it is unfortunately seeping in now in multiple ways and making it much harder. The politics of feeding people and nutrition, or protecting our climate funding for farmers and ranchers and rural electric co-ops and others who are making sure that we're tackling the climate crisis in rural communities, and that farmers are having the support they need and the tools that they need. So we're not going back. We're not going back on that. And then we need to make sure that we have a farm bill that works for all farmers, not just big farmers, not just farmers in the South, but farmers, big, small, farmers of color, urban growers. I mean, we need a broad farm bill, and that's just the way I approach it. I've been, as I said, doing this for a long time. When I first came into the Senate, in fact, I was in the House for 4 years on the Ag Committee, and then in the Senate, we had no provisions for specialty crops, the fruits and vegetables and nuts and other parts of almost half the cash receipts of the country for the farm economy, and yet they didn't have a place in the Farm Bill. There were 11 titles. I decided they should be a 12th after working for a number of years. And it was really hard. It was a huge fight to add a title to the Farm Bill. But we were able to do it. And now it's about growing and supporting organics and healthy foods, and making sure that we're expanding out in so many other ways. So in 2014, when I authored, that was 2008 with specialty crops. 2014 is the first bill that I was chair of the committee, and we focused very much on local food systems, doing more for farmers markets. What we now call the LAMP program, doing more in nutrition, double up bucks to give, added incentives to support healthy foods, which has become an integral part of what we do now through our nutrition programs. It's been so successful. Started by people in the community, and now started by people in Michigan, actually, in Detroit, and local folks supporting this effort came up with the idea of double up bucks, and it's now part of the Farm Bill. So I'm pleased to be in a leadership role where I can take the great ideas from Michigan and move them into the Farm Bill. With 2018, after the Flint water crisis, I did the same thing for produce prescriptions, which started in Flint, actually, with our dear friend, Dr. Mona, who was working so hard to protect children who'd been impacted by lead. And she was giving them a prescription from the doctor to go to the farmer's market and get fruits and vegetables. And it worked so well. She was giving people vouchers that I picked it up and put it in the farm bill. And so we've been working on how do we do more local foods, access to foods for people, and continuing to support SNAP. And then in the 2018 bill, we were able to develop an Office of Urban Agriculture. We had the first national conference. If you were there, that's great. Just at the beginning of August, I think there were something like 900 people there from around the country. It was wonderful. But again, so moving things forward, the fight that I had to do to get the Urban Agriculture Office was irrational in terms of the, the extent to which the big farmers and commodity groups didn't want to do that. But we got it. And so, and then in 2018, going on to focus more on tribes, tribal sovereignty, on farmers of color. And then the American Rescue Plan, my number one priority, when we started talking about what should be in the rescue plan, when we were focused on things coming out of COVID, I made debt forgiveness for BIPOC farmers the top priority ask that I had, and working with Senator Warnock and Senator Booker, we were able to get that. Unfortunately, Republicans went to court and were able to slow it down. They do that constantly, but we're back at it with a version to support farmers at risk and farmers of color. And support for farm workers also, we were able to do an American Rescue Plan in a way we haven't done before. I say all of this just to say it's step by step by step. And so we're not going back. I've introduced the Rural Prosperity and Food Security Act with input from all of our Democrats. And we've included 100 different bipartisan bills that are good ideas to reach out and make this bipartisan. And in that, we support all kinds of agriculture, all sizes of agriculture. We strengthen our efforts to address the climate crisis, which we know is on us every day. And so giving tools and support for farmers and ranchers and rural communities is critical. And we promote more sustainability, regenerative agriculture, other important tools as well. And then we support strong rural communities and their quality of life. If we want people to stay and live in rural communities, there has to be a rural hospital. There has to be support for childcare and small businesses and housing and all of those things that make up a strong community. And so we tackle all of that in our bill. The House passed a bill out of committee with just very few Republican vote or Democratic votes. And in fact, of the Democrats the four that voted for it, they joined with the other Democrats who opposed it in a letter indicating that they had deep concerns and opposed the deep nutrition cuts that were in that bill. So, but they reported something out that is unbalanced. It gives basically huge subsidies to large farmers in the South, cotton, rice, and peanut farmers, particularly very large ones. Most of the, not surprisingly, just like tax cuts, the farm subsidies that they have in their bill, 60% of it goes to 2% of the farms. So we have a very different approach, but they do not in any way reflect the support for agriculture nationwide, which is a problem. And they also take money from nutrition. We've never had money taken from the nutrition title to fund the commodity title or anything else. They take over $20 billion to do that. And then on top of that, they spend so much money that they still have a $33 billion deficit, according to the budget office. So we're not going to support that, obviously. But the reality is whatever we do has to be bipartisan. It's got to be people coming together to figure out how you do that. We've never passed a bill where there was, the attacks that we're seeing on nutrition. There just won't be a bill. if there's that. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. We're not going to take money away from conservation and all the climate efforts that are so important. But there is a way to come together if people really want to do that. So I am working overtime to try to find that spot where we move forward and maintain our values and priorities, but acknowledge others. We always have to acknowledge other interests. And so we want to do that, but it's a very tough time. It's a very tough time. Still could happen. There's a chance we could get this done by the end of the year. I just want you to know I'm doing everything humanly possible to find creative ways to make sure we're protecting the right priorities, but actually get a bill done. So that's what I'm focused on. I'm happy to answer questions or hear from all of you.
Thank you so much, Senator. And at some point in the over the last few minutes, your camera got a little blurry.
Oh,
and I don't know if that's if that was something that you
is it blurry now?
just just a touch.
Huh. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure what it is and how to fix it, actually.
Well, we're hearing you just fine, and I'm sure it's just something that Zoom's not agreeing with us, and
Somehow,
though we're ardently bipartisan, we'll blame the Republicans.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to Frances Stewart. She's the founder and owner of Flatwater Farms in Buchanan. Flatwater Farms and its on-site brewery restaurant, River St. Joe, was the farm's 2023 Southwest Michigan Sale Business of the Year. And Frances is going to tell you a little about her work and ask you a question if you don't mind.
Great.
Thank you so much for including me on this panel and webinar, and so nice to meet you, Senator.
You.
So I thought I would give just a quick background of my farm and how I got into this. I bought the farm in 2014, and I'm a first-generation farmer. My father was an academic in plant pathology at Purdue, and my mother was a botanist. So I was exposed to farming, but we did not farm in our family. We did gardening, so a little bit different. So I've had to learn on the job. And the first goal, though, for me, when I bought this farm was to convert it to organic certification. So that is a process that does take 3 years to get through that. And it's a little bit onerous, a lot of paperwork, a lot of rules, but they're for good reason. And I think we actually go beyond a lot of the requirements of organic in terms of allocating land for native species. We do a lot of things that go beyond organic, like alley cropping, and we are doing a lot of different regenerative agricultural practices. We developed a greenhouse that is actually subterranean, so it uses geothermal heat, so we're not using propane to heat it. And then we get logs donated from the local utility companies, and we chop them up, and we have a firewood fireplace in our greenhouse that heats water and then heats our plants, so that we're also not using fossil fuels to heat our greenhouses, but we can start our transplants in the greenhouse without that extra energy cost. My first goal was trying to figure out what crops to grow, and we have a 180-acre farm. It's small on the scale of farming, but I really wanted to focus on specialty crops instead of what I think there's too much corn and soybean around the country, and be able to offer products to our local community. So we started out with both vegetables for our community as well as hops, and we ended up many years later opening, as Daniel mentioned, an organic brewery on site on the farm. So we're a little bit into tourism as well, so people can have a farm-to-table restaurant, organic beer, and view the farm as part of their experience. And hopefully we'll add more education as well as part of our operation. But we do, as part of our operation, we also do composting from the brewery, the spent grain and the yeast and the hops, composting from the kitchen. We compost all our farm waste as well. And we, as I mentioned, are doing a lot of alley cropping, which is putting perennials in with annuals. And as we know, perennials have a deeper root system and are really good for the soil. So we're doing that, and we planted over 500 trees, a variety of evergreens, fruit and nut trees. And so we are trying to make the farm more sustainable on that aspect too. We also have just added livestock. Actually, bees are considered livestock according to the USDA. So we have bees and we have sheep at this point. So, but our real goal is to provide a local and organic produce to our local community. We have a CSA, we have an on-site farm store, and then we go to farmers market. So we want to, have people understand where the food comes from and see what fresh food really tastes like. It's pretty amazing to be able to, for people to start to really taste the difference, actually. So, but anyway, as part of being on this panel, I'd love to ask you a little bit more about how we get more, support for organic, for regenerative, for silvopastures, even soil carbon sequestration, if there can be benefits or incentives for farmers to plant more trees, and municipal composting. These are all areas where I think farmers can add value to the community and to our earth and to our climate, right? So absolutely. I know that's a bundle of questions, but thank you so much.
Yeah, climate smart agriculture.
It's great. I mean, I love what you're doing. Congratulations on everything you're doing. So let me just in general say that we do have incentives for, first of all, tree planting. A number of years ago created the first urban tree program to deal with what is not just pulling carbon out of the air, but also with economic justice issues. And, we need to make sure that parks and cities and streets and schools, and that, people have the shade that they need, and communities. And it's very much a environmental justice issue in my mind, as well as a climate issue, dealing with issues certainly large scale plantings are very important. Orchards are part of that. When we talk about in Michigan, cherry growers or apple growers or peach growers and so on, the strategy is partly importantly climate, but it's also about growing the fruit and doing as much as we can sustainably. So we have part of what happened that we did in the Inflation Reduction Act. We had almost $20 billion to invest in what we dubbed climate smart agriculture, but there was additional funds for sustainable forestry. And we also had, urban forestry in there. And I have that in our farm bill, our Democratic farm bill extends that as well. So there's a number of different things on that. And also it's interesting, just a story on where we've come from. When I first came into the Senate Agriculture Committee as chair, I'd been on the committee, but 2011, and I wanted to do a hearing. There'd never been a hearing before on climate, on what was happening in the climate. I couldn't get this bipartisan support. We always do things in terms of hearings with the top Republican, top Democrat agreeing. So I couldn't get agreement on doing something on climate. So I did a hearing on severe weather. And we all talked about climate. But Yeah, but the point is, we have actually come a long ways. I mean, the first time we were trying to do a climate bill back during President Obama's years, and a bill passed the House and so on, I was trying to get farmers to acknowledge there was a climate crisis because they're getting hit over the head every day. And now they talk about it. Now they say, okay, we get it. We know there's a climate crisis, but we don't know what to do about it or help us do something about it. So we have seen that move, which is important. I mean, we still have a lot more to do, but we are seeing things like the corn growers wanting to do a healthy soils project, which we did in the last farm bill. It was all carbon. It was all carbon sequestration. That's what it was. I mean, they called it healthy soils so we could get it through the Republicans, but it was climate. And the same thing back in the 2014 bill, I put together something called conservation innovation projects, grants, conservation innovation. And it was all about how do you protect the prairies? The first proposal was in North Dakota. How do you stop tearing up the prairie? And how do we, address things from a climate standpoint? So there, and now with the almost 20 billion that we have from the Inflation Reduction Act, that is all about strategies to keep carbon in the soil, cover crops, that do multiple things in terms of not only keeping carbon in the ground, but they hold pesticides in place. You need less pesticides if you use them at all. You're also growing a crop, which is also taking carbon out of the atmosphere at the same time. We have a whole range of strategies now to deal with not only carbon, but methane, which is 25 times more dangerous, dissipates faster, but more dangerous, broader carbon strategies. And so we're at a pivotal point where, frankly, in terms of this farm bill, it's about protecting that money and not going backwards, because the people who are supporting the big oil agenda, frankly, want us to stop this. They want us to stop doing this. And it's not just in ag. They want us to take away the credits to buy an electric vehicle. Or today I was out celebrating folks that have solar panels on their home, on their roof, and the tax credits and all that. So it's that whole thing is about slowing down, efforts to get off of oil and fossil fuels. But we have multiple things. And if there's something you're particularly interested in, please let my team know, and we're happy to direct you and see if there's something in particular that we have in current policy and that we're working on for the next bill.
That's fantastic. And I actually failed to mention that we are currently working on doing an agrivoltaic operation. So we've been approached by a couple of different solar developers that, because of the incentives, are interested, and we don't want to eliminate our farmland. So we've worked with them to allow us to graze our sheep underneath the panels. So you're not eliminating the land from being used and having cover crops on it and growing and keeping the soil, the carbon in the soil. So we're really excited because the economics are very favorable, because there are some incentives as we transition to renewable energies. But that's kind of in the works for us, because as farming is a tough way to make a living, and the economics are razor thin.
Yep.
So
absolutely. And I would say that a lot of the incentives that you're seeing now are from the Inflation Reduction Act that we passed a year and a half ago on 30%. If you do solar, rooftop solar, you get 30%, tax cut, or if there's other equipment related to that. And there's a lot of different incentives, the agriculture incentives and so on. But the farm bill is the other part of it. The rural assistance, REAP, Rural Energy Assistance Program, that I was able to make permanent in the last farm bill, will provide grants for solar for farms, or wind turbines, or geothermal, other options. And so the farm bill has an important energy title. And honestly, we every time we see the other side of aisle wanting to just eliminate the energy title, which we don't do. But we have the energy title, and then we have the new incentives around tax credits and incentives in agriculture and sustainable forestry and so on. So there's a lot out there. We've got to just make sure everybody has the support to use those things, and that we can keep them going, because a number of these things are just getting started.
Thank you so much, Francis, and thank you, and thank you again, Senator. The video thing we highlighted earlier, that has sorted itself out. I'd like to introduce Katie Nasons, Vice President of Tory Advisory Group, who I believe you had some past familiarity with as a member of the committee staff. She is here today representing the Zero Food Waste Coalition, which supported our organization's recent Michigan Food Waste Roadmap project, and is heavily invested in working to advance food loss and waste prevention within the Farm Bill. She is joined for the Q&A today with Alex Nichols-Venenza, Director of Food Loss and Waste for the World Wildlife Fund, and Heather Latino, Clinical Instructor of the Harvard Law and Policy Clinic. Katie?
Well, Katie, hello. We want you to know this is part of Team Stabenow here for years and years and years. So, a lot of the good stuff I've been talking about, Katie did. So it's great to see you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you all for inviting me to come and participate in this great conversation. Senator Stabenow, I do miss working for you. I have to say that up front. But I am here. Yeah. I'm here today on behalf of the Zero Food Waste Coalition. We are a fairly new coalition that's really dedicated to reducing food waste and loss across the entire supply chain. The coalition was originally founded in April of 2023, and the founding members are ReFed, the Harvard Food and Law Policy Clinic, World Wildlife Fund, and the Natural Resources Defense Council. So what's really exciting is since the creation of this about a year ago, we now have over 214 members across the entire country. And we have a presence in all 50 states. So really, really excited to be here. We are a coalition of nonprofits, of businesses, research institutions. We have retailers, farm organizations, and obviously a lot of really great members in Michigan. So I'm just here to tell you a little bit about the food waste problem, and then I would love to ask you a couple questions about how food waste is evolving in the Farm Bill conversation, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Well, first off, I think everybody here on the call knows that food waste is a very significant problem. About 40% of all of the food in the US is either lost or wasted, and this equates to about 235 million tons of food. And so when you think about that, with 44 million Americans who are experiencing food insecurity, or 1 in 8 Americans, having the food waste problem would have a significant impact on food security. Not only is it about food security, but it's also an economic problem. Right now, we are facing a lot of increased prices with all of the food that we're going to the grocery store to buy, and all of the farmers, the transporters, the fresh water, the natural resources that we put into growing food. About $473 billion a year goes wasted, which is just wild when you kind of think about the big numbers. And I think the last really important thing to mention about food waste is its really negative impact on the climate and the environment. Food is the largest contributor to land waste, and it's responsible for 6% of all annual US greenhouse gas emissions. So this is a really big problem. It should be something that's very easy to solve. And I think as the coalition has evolved and we keep talking about this, we keep saying this is probably the world's dumbest problem. But we're really excited because under your leadership in the 2018 Farm Bill, it was the first time that food waste was brought to the national attention. And so I'm here today to ask you, how are we progressing in the food waste conversation? What are the priorities that you have included in your proposal? And can you talk a little bit about both the No Time to Waste Act and food date labeling? That's been one of the really big challenges is at the consumer level, there's a lot of confusion around whether something's good to eat by this date or do I throw it away? So if you can answer those two questions, that'd be great.
Well, thank you so much for your work and everybody's work in this area. It's absolutely critical. And when you look at the numbers, it's astounding, actually. And so this ought to be a no-brainer. But the problem we have is that it's not on everybody's radar screen. So the coalition you have is helping to make that happen. And it's about making it a priority, which it is for me and for my team. We are, here's how we're looking at things. We've thought about sort of a central location or an office in USDA dedicated to food waste. But here's what I also know from our experience in working to stand up an urban agriculture office. It can take a long time to stand up these offices. And so we are really looking at a different approach to make sure food waste efforts are strengthened in multiple areas, engulfing all the goals that we care about. And Senator Kuhn's bill, No Time to Waste Act. So we're incorporating his bill to create and fund new regional coordinators for food loss and waste reduction. I think this is important, and we can get that going faster. Specific food loss and waste as a priority for FAR, our Agriculture Foundation, to have them be leaning in much more in doing research and developing tools and so on. Also, we're in our bill requiring USDA to coordinate with EPA and FDA to carry out the terms of the interagency agreement to reduce food waste and food loss. That needs to happen. That needs to be going. And we direct the food loss and waste reduction liaison to initiate a national education effort, because so much of this really is about awareness. It's about people understanding this and being educated. So this is a part of it as well. And we authorize funds to carry out that activity. I also understand how confusing the food date labels are. There's no question, and that leads to food waste. Unfortunately, Senator Blumenthal's bill, his Food Date Labeling Act, is not in the Agriculture Committee's jurisdiction. It's in the Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee. So we can't put it in, because the way we operate with the Farm Bill, it's only those things within our jurisdiction that we put in a bill to go to committee and mark up. Then when we go to the floor, other things can be added. And so that's where something like that bill needs to be added as an amendment. So that's something that I think is important, but we have to keep within our own jurisdiction of USDA for what we put together for the committee. But this is very, very important, and I'm anxious to see things happen as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Senator. Again, we really appreciate your partnership and support on all of these issues. And we're really excited to work with you on getting a Farm Bill done and getting to that amendment process. So thank you very much.
Great, absolutely.
And Senator, wanted to do just a quick note that your staff has informed me that you have someone that we have a hard stop for you at 5:15. So we have about 6 minutes left. I just want to make sure you're aware, make sure you're aware of that. And our understanding is that the committee staff is going to stay behind and carry on the Q&A from there along with our panel.
Absolutely. We have a fantastic staff. I'm sorry that I've got to step away at 5:15, but I'll talk fast, and they can stay on and answer questions and hear of other concerns and ideas that you have.
Well, on that note, and again, we are grateful for your time today. I'd like to introduce Alita Kelly, who in her prior role as co-founder of the Southeast Market was our 2022 West Michigan Sale Business of the Year.
Yay.
She has since served as a consultant educator through her firm Jade Rabbit, and has recently become a first-generation farmer through investment in the Ambrosia Grove apple orchard in Manistee. She's also chair for the West Michigan Young Farmers Chapter, which is part of the National Young Farmers Coalition, which I believe you're familiar with their work.
Absolutely.
Alita?
Hi.
Hi there, Senator Stabenow. Thank you so much to the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum for putting this together, and Senator for taking time to connect with us all. And I just wanted to thank you so much for all the work you've done over your career to support farmers locally, nationally, including sustainability, DEI, and urban ag initiatives. It's really an honor to be here with a leader like yourself.
Thank you.
My name is Alita, and I've been working in food systems work for about 12 years now. I'm currently the CEO of Jade Rabbit, a strategic planning and urban ag development company, supporting several entities from Michigan Department of Education, doing farm to school work, local nonprofits to increase access to healthy food in rural counties, all the way to corporate, just to ensure the sustainable and equitable transition of our food system into the future. And as chair of the West Michigan Young Farmers Coalition, which is one of about 40 chapters across the country, associated and guided by the National Young Farmers Coalition, whose goal is to resource the future generation of farmers through federal policy and advocacy. I'm so grateful to also be included in the farmer category, put on my farmer hat, having just acquired a 10-acre apple orchard in northern Michigan, Ambrosia Grove.
Great.
Thank you. My experience uplifting underserved farmers through the founding of a locally focused grocery store, and now as the chair of the West Michigan chapter of Young Farmers, has made it clear that the biggest barrier for underserved farmers is equitable access to land. I'm very grateful to see the Senate draft of the Farm Bill include critical elements of both the Farmer to Farmer Education Act, as well as the Small Farms Conservation Act. So thank you for highlighting their importance in your draft. Unfortunately, it seems that land access was one thing that was hard to incorporate. And I had the honor of chatting with some of your staffers who are here today a couple of weeks ago about why that is. And what they mentioned is it's really hard to get colleagues from across the aisle to come to the table and work on negotiations around equitable land access initiatives. So, despite many federal and nonprofit-based programs that support farmers, it's really hard to find opportunities to support farmers in acquiring land or support in retaining land. And that is the foundation of their operation.
Right.
So our chapter in West Michigan has created the West Michigan Farmers of Colored Land Fund, following the footsteps of the Detroit and Washtenaw County Black Farmer Land Fund. But what are some strategies that can be employed to ensure the demographic of farmers most committed to sustainable agriculture, being new, young, BIPOC farmers, have a fighting chance to contribute to our food system despite the inadequate resources available for equitable land access?
Well, thank you, Alita. That's such an important question. And one of the things that we're finding now as we go forward, particularly around urban agriculture, but also look at small farms and so on, we're discovering all of the issues like this that need to be addressed. And so we want to work with you and others on a long-term basis on what we should be doing here. And on land access, I think this actually is a bigger part of a whole discussion about the Farm Bill, because too much of the Farm Bill is owned by investors, too much of the land by investors, and farmers, are renting the land already, even farmers who have land, and the prices go up. If we do more to try to help farmers through support, then they raise the rents. I mean, there's a whole range of things there. And then the questions that you're looking at around just access to land, and what do we do to make that possible. Let me back up also and say that there is a long history of discrimination in the Department of Agriculture programs. It's probably the first discrimination was way back. And so trying to figure out how to get through these barriers and come up with support is something that we're going to need to keep working and working and working on. And by the way, it's one of the reasons that I had put forward the original debt relief program for all BIPOC farmers with USDA loans. And I think we've got to keep moving forward on that. Now, the USDA recently took a historic step in addressing some of the discrimination through a discrimination financial assistance program, part of what we did. But again, the issues around land that you're raising, we've got to figure out, what is that strategy? What are the strategies there to make that happen? The USDA has an equity commission. They've published over 60 different recommendations. Earlier this year, I'd welcome your thoughts on any of those. They're including, targeting outreach and support, both for tribal communities and farmers of color and so on. But we have to figure out what is that set of strategies on land that would make a real difference. I will say that in addition to having land, one of the things that I'm working on with our urban farmers is with a small pot. You said you've got 10 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if you only have a lot or half an acre or an acre and you're in a city, the water bills, the way they structure things, creates havoc for urban growers. The zoning creates problems. And so I've worked with the mayor of Detroit, who for the first time is now having an urban agriculture coordinator at the city to work through things. And we know, for instance, this is different than land per se, but water access in urban areas is extremely serious in terms of being able to get access to affordable water. And so I've worked with the NRCS, the Natural Resources Commission head in Michigan, Gary Lee, and we've gotten federal money to put $2 million into Michigan as a pilot to come up with strategies around small farms, urban farmers, and how to deal with water costs. So I say that only to say we got to figure all of this out. The good news is that we want to figure it out. I mean, when I first, I feel like this back in the day, but when I first brought up the idea of urban agriculture, I was negotiating with the Republican chair from Texas in the South, and he was all cotton, big cotton. And when I wanted to do an office of urban agriculture, he turned purple and his head spun. I mean, and it was not that much money. It was the idea that agriculture can't be in urban areas or small farms. You can't have a 10-acre farm, And so the good news is that we won on those issues. Now we're talking about what's the strategies, what's the money. And so that's the next step. And I'm anxious to work with you specifically on the land issues.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alita. And thank you, Senator Stabenow. We really look forward to seeing how the Farm Bill process turns out this year. And appreciate your time your time this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Please keep up the wonderful work. And my great team will stay on. So you guys solve all the problems. Let me know. I'm ready to go. So thanks.
Thanks again, Senator. Thanks again, Alita. And then with us, with us representing the committee, we have Brandon, Callie, and Khadija. Team, would you mind introducing yourself and your portfolios as we continue the conversation in the Senator's absence?
Sure, I can get started. Hi, everyone. Khadija Jaffia. Just want to make sure you all can hear me. My internet's been a little bit spotty, so if you can't hear me, just let me know. Khadijah Jaffe, I've been with the team for about 5 years, and I lead our team's work on local foods, urban ag, food waste, and then our broader equity portfolio, focusing on tribal communities, historically underserved producers, new, young, veteran producers, the whole lot. And then also do some work on nutrition and non-nutrition. And I will pass it off to Brandon.
Thanks, Khadijah. Hope folks can hear me as well. Brandon Honeycutt, Senior Professional Staff with Chairwoman Stabenow's team, handling specialty crops, research, organics, hemp, food safety, ag labor, a bunch of odds and ends, support Khadijah on work on underserved producers, and try and support the team overall. I will pass it to Callie.
Thanks, Brandon. Hi, everyone. Callie Eidelberg. I lead all of the work on the committee when it comes to conservation. And then I do a lot of our coordinating work amongst all of our team members on climate, because climate is not just one title of the Farm Bill, it's all titles of the Farm Bill. Thanks so much for having us here today. I know we're a sad substitute for the chairwoman, but we'll do our best.
Thanks so much. And we have a number of questions get started, and I was remiss in recognizing the person who put most of this together for us today, Mary Jugnick, who's also on the call, who's the regional manager for the Senator's office. As we begin our Q&A, I'd like to introduce Hagen Kappenhurst, who's the field organizer and specialized in the Farm Bill for Michigan Food and Farming Systems. We have around 10 minutes here with the Senator's team and our other panelists for Q&A. And I see we have a number of those in those already in the app. Appreciate those who have kicked those off. And again, to begin this, I'd like to hand it over to Hagen, a forum member and collaborator, who is going to offer us an initial response to the things we heard today.
Thanks, Dan. It's good to see most of you from the Stabenow team again. So my name is Hagen Kappenhurst. I work with Michigan's beginning and underserved producers to elevate and achieve their needs in federal ag policy, from advocating for improvements from program creation to implementation. And we know that next year there will be a top Democrat on the Senate Ag Committee. And for the first time in over a decade, they won't be from Michigan. As Michiganders, how can we make sure that Michigan's food, farm, and sustainable business priorities continue to be front of mind for the next top Democrat on the Senate Ag Committee?
I can jump in and offer some thoughts, and Khadijah and Brandon can elaborate. I think this is a challenge. And it's going to be difficult. Michigan has enjoyed such a wonderful place in the spotlight over the last 10 years, and it will be different. I think, though, it's important to ensure that whoever comes in and leads the Democrats is fully educated on these issues. That outreach from farmer voices at the local level is really important, no matter whether the chairperson is from Michigan or Minnesota or any other state. But I also think that applies broadly to all members of the committee. There is a Republican lead as well, and right now that Republican lead is from Arkansas, and he and his staff should know about how agriculture works in Michigan. And I would challenge everybody here to get out there, to make those calls, to do those meetings and have those conversations. Education is important, and sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
I think I'll just echo that to Callie's point. In the work that we do, the squeaky wheel is often the one that gets the grease. And so I think leaning in and making your voices heard, recognizing that you may not have a direct line like you have to Senator Stabenow right now, but I think that is where folks can get very creative and work through both regional and national coalitions as well. I think that's something that whenever we're doing our work, that's a way that we funnel information a lot and hear information that's happening both at the state and local level is through coalitions. So I think trying to flex muscles internally within those organizations as well is a really good way to make Michigan's voice heard in different ways.
I'll just add to that and say that while it will be a challenge, you certainly have the senator's legacy and momentum working for you. And, I would challenge you to take advantage of that. So many of Michigan priorities that the senator has worked so hard to uplift here in DC and at the federal level have become such big priorities for the broader Democratic caucus. And so just keeping that in mind, that these are, homegrown solutions and priorities that are very important to the state, but they've become really great priorities across the caucus, regardless of where folks are located. So that's just something to keep in mind. Remember the other champions that you have that are not necessarily from Michigan, but still care about the issues that are, deeply important to the state.
Thank you all very much. Really appreciate that. And shameless plug here for all business owners, especially farmers on the call, to join me in that education advocacy. I don't know if contact information will be shared after, but I'm happy to put my email contact in the chat, and happy to support in getting in touch with your members of Congress to make that education happen. Really appreciate y'all's time.
Wonderful. And and we will be sharing out contact information, but I would encourage you to go ahead and put it in now, because the might as well get while the iron's hot, right, Hagen? And and I want to thank Hagen for answering a few questions in the chat already for us, highlighting that PFAS remediation is included in the current framework of the bill, and making the community compost and food waste reduction pilot program permanent is also included in the current version of the bill. For those who are interested, for those who feel most comfortable asking, what is the over/under on the Farm Bill getting passed before the end of 2024? And if, in the event that the majority does change, how does that impact anything or supposedly everything we're talking about today?
Callie, do you want me to take a stab?
Sure. I feel like it's going to be an unsatisfactory answer no matter who answers it.
that is the big question. Frankly, and the calendar is not our friend right now. If this was up to Debbie Stabenow, this would have been done well over a year ago, because she has been trying to keep folks' feet to the flames and get this bill done just as quickly as we can. Looking ahead, we really don't have that many legislative dates. We're in for the month of September. Folks are going to be out for the month of October ahead of elections. And then we come back in for a lame duck window at the end of the year, when we also have to deal with government funding, and there's going to be an MBA, the annual defense bill, and things like that. So the congressional calendar is short, and the to-do list is very long. All of that to say, strange things happen in an election year. We never know how things that happen in November could influence folks' willingness or unwillingness to get a bill done and to compromise. But as the chairwoman said, the original proposal that she put out, the Rural Prosperity and Food Security Act, incorporates well over 100 bipartisan bills. So her mark that is out there is meant to be an opportunity for folks to rally around a proposal and to really bring folks to the table for serious negotiations. So we're there. She's still trying. She's pushing just as hard as she can with her colleagues. I know she's been talking to folks on the phone and over Zoom all over recess. So she still continues to push. I think to the second part of that question, in terms of how does this dynamic change in the new year, honestly, for the Senate, it doesn't. Even if the majority changes, neither party is going to have 60 votes. And so at the end of the day, whatever bill ultimately is successful in getting through the Senate will have to be a bipartisan bill. It's not going to look radically different, I think, than the proposal that the chairwoman has put out there now, because, again, that is a bill that's reflective of all the bipartisan asks that are out there right now. The challenges will still remain as getting 60 votes across the Senate floor, and then the complicated math on the back end as to how do we work creatively with USDA to pay for all of these important provisions that we're pushing forward. So that's the sort of dirty behind the scenes work that we're trying to do now, with the tough details of ironing out those negotiations. But from a process standpoint, the Senate, it takes 60 votes to really do anything on the Senate floor. And so that math does not get any better or worse next Congress, no matter who's in charge, because no one's going to have that big of a threshold. So we are still staying the course. We are still keeping our heads down. And I think, harkening back to the previous question, the chairwoman is retiring. And so she's got until the end of the year to get this package across the line. And that's why she is so committed to doing so, because this is a very good bill for the state of Michigan. And she wants to make sure that she can get that stamp on this legislation while it's still active. So we're trying. Stranger things have happened in election years. The chairwoman is going to be, I think, making rounds on the Senate floor next week whenever we come back in session. So I fear for any of our colleagues who stand in her way when she's down there on the floor, because she's on a mission to try and get the votes and to get folks actually to the table to do these negotiations. Callie or Khadijah, Mary, anything else I forgot there?
No, I think you covered it. We're all kind of anxious to see what happens over the next 3 weeks, and then what can get done in a lame duck session. You never know.
And the senator today said she's the ultimate optimist, and she is. So that's on her side, as well as if you talked with her colleagues, her persistence is on her side. Because some of her colleagues have said in the past, when you see Debbie Stabenow coming towards you, you just need to be prepared to say yes, because she's going to get you to a yes. So her persistence has paid off in the past too. So just to let you know that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much to Mary and the Senator Committee's team for sticking around with us today. Very grateful for the Senator's time and for all the work that you're doing to advance these issues we talked about today. To our attendees who asked a few questions, we will follow up in the next few days with our best attempts at some answers specifically on how conservation interacts with ethanol production, the relationship between 10 cents a meal and state programs, the Miller Amendment, which is something that I had not heard of and I'm fascinated to learn about, and then of course how we can all support Senator Stabenow and food systems advocates in moving these forward and identifying specific messages around them. Also, on a similar note, if you find your way into Southwest Michigan, even remotely near Buchanan, it is worth at least 40 minutes out of your way. I don't know if you're going to arrive yet this summer from the Son of Francis. You're going to see the sheep and the solar panels interacting, but I know I'm going to add that on my list to make sure to get down there and check that out as soon as I can. And if you've never been to the Flatwater Farms River St. Joe, it is one of the best establishments in the entire state of Michigan. So please make that trip down, and we're delighted to have you today. And if you did come here today, hopeful to hear a lot more about food waste and composting, know that we're going to have a lot more of that for you in the future. And also know that if you're a qualifying organization, you can become a member of the Zero Food Waste Coalition as well. And I believe their monthly meeting is actually tomorrow. So if you are an advocate group or somebody who's in the food system, please learn more. Please invite you to learn more about that organization. Thank you, Lily Kelly, who did have to take off today, and of course, thank you to Hagen for your support in this effort and all the wonderful things that MIFS is doing. Appreciate everyone bearing with me as I got a mouthful wrapping up. One last thing as we let everyone go, as you log out of Zoom, please fill out their brief satisfaction survey. And as a quick note, we talk about issues that are important, that we think are important to you. One of the things that we did engage on last year related to carbon emissions. There is a need for people to hear your voice on that. So please do keep an eye out from us for a sign-on letter in collaboration for the Climate Action Campaign, which you'll see in the chat if you have a moment to fill it out before you go. And with that, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we are very grateful to the Senator staff and very grateful to our panelists.